Welcome, Zach. We are pre-recording this interview on March 18th. This is the date your movie, Zack Snyder's Justice League, premieres on HBO Max. So we can't thank you enough for making time today of all days to celebrate with us our Greek independence, 200th anniversary of Greek independence. On March 25th, 1821, Greece became an independent state after 400 years of living under Ottoman rule. Before that time period, of course, there was King Leonidas and the 300, another proud moment of Greek history.
Yeah,
that's what we're here to talk about. But to start, I want to recount briefly the scene in the film where Xerxes tells Leonidas that if he doesn't kneel before him, he and his fellow Spartans would be destroyed and erased from history, that the world would never know he existed. One of the memorable quotes from the film is when Leonidas says, "The world will know that free men stood against a tyrant, that few stood against many, and before this battle is over, that even a god king can bleed." And of course, we know how the film ends. So Leonidas was fighting not just for Spartans, but for all of Greece. And it is this act of bravery that has defined Greece and the Greek people, and why Greece and most of the world values freedom. So speaking of freedom, I have to ask you, how gratifying, if that's the right word, for you under the circumstances to be getting to this point where you get to the release your version of Justice League with all the reshoots, the new characters, the expanded universe, etc., where your name is not just above the title, but is incorporated in the title.
You know, it's been amazingly cathartic for all of us, and for my crew and my family and all of us, and just creatively, you know, it's sort of a once in a lifetime experience to have a thing that you feel like is lost and have it get reborn. This phoenix that can, you know, rise. And it's been, you know, unbelievable. If you had asked me, you know, a year ago, I would have said, nah, I'm not sure. I don't think so, but it's really great. So, but thank you for asking. And it's exciting. It is an exciting time.
Yeah, I love the artwork that it says Zack Snyder's Justice League, to know that that's the title. That's just not a film by Zack Snyder. Credit.
And also, well, I just felt like because there was a theatrical version, you know, this helped to delineate the two, you know, just to say the director's cut doesn't really tell the story of, you know, the difference between the two movies. I've never even seen the other version. So it's really cool.
So you could pretty much draw a straight line from Hercules, undoubtedly one of the most iconic figures in all of Greek mythology, to Superman and other modern superheroes. What came first for you, comics or Greek mythology?
That's a tough one. I think it was a bit of a tie in my, you know, in my schooling. I was very much into Greek mythology. You know, we had, you know, and maybe it started with Samson. You know, those kinds of stories. He was my favorite biblical story, was Samson. And so you can see it's an easy jump to Hercules from there. And I studied art in high school and in college. And I think the human form and just that whole thing became a real touchstone for me and a real inspiration. So it just made sense that I would take something like that all the way to its cinematic, you know, conclusion.
So even beyond superheroes, Greek myths are still a powerful force in modern culture when it comes to movies, TV shows, and video games. Why have they endured for so long, and what is so universal and timeless about their appeal?
Yeah, they're the archetypal stories, the Greeks with their and I'm not even talking about the actual awesome history and the amazing struggles for even just fledgling democracy, or creation of like modern theater, almost as we know it. Like so many things that we take for granted that have come from Greek minds. But mythologically speaking, the Greeks have an amazing and uncanny knack of deciphering the world through their myths, and really teaching us about the world through the myths that we all know, that are weirdly sort of in our own psyches and in our own culture. And I think that it is that insight into using story and to teach us about the world, and maybe frankly why filmmakers and writers are drawn to Greek myth, because of that. As a storyteller, going to the source of storytelling seems
Right.
like, that seems like a smart thing to do. So yeah, we all owe a huge debt of gratitude to the Greek myth that's informed all of us about how to relate to character and story and symbolism and just the whole thing.
So why did the heroes and demigods of myth, or I should say, what did the heroes and demigods of myth mean to Greek society, and do modern superheroes fulfill a similar role in modern civilization?
Yeah, I maintain that, like, if through mythology we understand the natural world in symbols, and if for instance, there's a natural disaster or whatever, and as human beings, before science, let's say, we needed a way of processing these events. An easy way is through these god myths and through these god stories, understanding, the personality of a mountain or of a volcano, or like to give those things the afterlife meaning, And in the same way, I believe modern superheroes do a similar thing, in that they can inform us about this modern world we live in with its modern challenges, even without, let's say, some sort of, it's more emotional, because now we find ourselves in these emotional landscapes that we can't navigate. And I think superheroes serve as a great tool to understanding our psyches and understanding, just how we live in the world. And I think that they for sure share and owe a debt of gratitude to their mythic forefathers that have basically set them on a pedestal, frankly, that we can take down now and play with and use in our own lives. So that's really for sure how it is.
Right. So I was going to ask you, do we have a modern equivalent of consulting the oracle? I mean, you sort of just answered that. But is fandom in pop culture simply a secular version of the hundreds of ancient Hellenistic mystical cults devoted to individual gods, heroes, and kings?
Yeah, that's an interesting way of looking at it. It's really and cool. And I think that that there's probably a lot of ways, and maybe consulting the oracle is the very screens that we look at. Maybe it's the very, the communities are, during this time of COVID, everything's fractured, and we are, our realities are abstracted by, TV screens. And so it would make sense that the gods on screen or on these screens probably need to talk to us about those feelings, And so, yes, I would say that the fandom has become a kind of, they are they pass judgment on ideas and
Right.
events. It's pretty crazy. It's pretty cool in some ways.
So what can you tell us about how 300 came together? I wanted to know, whether you were attached from the beginning. Did you option the Frank Miller graphic novels because as a passion project?
Yeah, I was a Frank Miller fan, and I was in the office of Gianni Nunari, and Gianni had the graphic novel on his desk, and I knew the book very well. I had collected all of the singles, and I had the graphic novel. At that point, I didn't have an idea that necessarily we'd be making it into a movie, but I thought it was a beautiful book. And he and I were talking about what is original in movies. What can we do that hasn't been done? And I looked at that book and I said, if someone would let me just make those pictures move, I could make something cool. That started the journey, and we got the rights from Frank, and then we took it around to the different studios, I already had like a take, I had all this beautiful lookbook, and I said, this is how I want the movie to be. And, we got a no from everybody in the first round.
But why was it important for you to bring 300 to the big screen? Was it just that you just loved the graphic novels?
Yeah, I did know the story, and I knew that it had, I knew that it was our Alamo, basically, it was a Greek Alamo, or the Alamo was a American 300. I think there's a famous, I guess, after the Alamo, and it just kind of gives you an idea about how much more knowledge people had about, I think, classics. In those days, I think the Chicago paper ran a story that the headline was "Thermopylae has an equal." That was it. That was the headline, and I just find that incredibly, that meant something to, to the people in those days. That's a pretty incredible thing. But yeah, so I thought, okay, this is a compelling story, and I just, Frank borrowed a lot from Herodotus, a lot of the dialogue, and I just was moved by it. Come back with your shield or on it, or we fight in the shade, and all those like incredibly amazing lines that frankly are just kind of lifted from the histories in a great way. And then he had his artistic take on symbolic version of those Spartans, that was these half-naked men with no armor, just standing out against these like impossible odds. And that really appealed to me. I just thought that was an amazing and impossibly cool movie to be able to make if we could.
So what additional research did you have to do on the actual history? Did you just set out to do sort of a faithful adaptation?
I did a bunch of research, and I met with a bunch of historians. Bettany Hughes, for instance, I don't know if you know Bettany. She's an amazing English historian and friend. She actually, I just recently wrote a script for Warner Brothers about Alexander the Great during COVID, and she was consulted with me quite a bit. And she's out shooting her BBC things, and she would always send me like a video from like some Greek tomb that they had uncovered, and she'd be there by herself, and she'd be like, Zach, listen to the birds here. Imagine Alexander walking here, and these are the bird sounds he would hear, because it's basically suddenly, she's in some spot, and there's no cars or anybody, and it's just like this transportive moment. So she's amazing because she's a romantic, but also a really great historian, and I love that combo. For me, that's perfect, But yeah, so I did a bunch of research, and I just felt like, Frank had gotten the only thing we expanded was Gorgo's role a bit in the movie.
Right.
We just, I really wanted to give her some strength, but beyond that, it's pretty much as it is.
So what can you tell us about the casting, and in particular the role of King Leonidas? Was Gerard Butler always your first choice, or did he have to audition? Were there others that you considered for that role?
Gerard was there pretty early. It was difficult to find someone who could personify in a way that kind of laconic wit, but also strength. And he really seemed to fit the bill in like this perfect kind of confidence, lovable arrogance, ability,
Right.
like real ability, like, because that's the other thing,
And physically, he's a big guy. I mean,
and physically he's a big guy, and he looks the part, like when
I
you
run
see
into
him.
him in New York, and I didn't know he was as tall and broad as he is.
Yeah.
Actually, I had two run-ins with him in New York. One, standing outside an elevator, I didn't introduce myself. The other time I was in my car, and he was crossing Baker Street, and I rolled down my window and yelled, "This is Sparta!" Got a reaction out of him, which was kind of funny. But
That's cool. I like that. We were talking actually yesterday. We were talking about how he did This is Sparta at the Spartans in Michigan before a football game. Like, he came out on the field, and the entire stadium was like, like went completely nuts, which is pretty fun,
So I have to ask you, you infamously use lots of intricately posed slow motion shots that evoke ancient statutes, a practice I think you started with 300 and carried on to your more mainstream superhero work. I suppose you took inspiration from classical sculpture in your filmmaking style, being an art student. Can you elaborate more on that?
There's a painting by David in the Louvre of Thermopylae, and everyone's pretty much naked and they're just like, they look amazing. And I remember seeing that painting when I was in college and thinking like, man, that would be a cool movie. Then knowing about the books but having that sort of classical form starting there, but then going back and going, wow, like look at the sculpture and the and paintings, and just there's so much to unpack in our aesthetic, how the Greeks have informed our aesthetic, and like what it means to be fit, or what it means to be kind of a human in physical form. Really, the Greeks kind of really, they stamped that, into our psyche, and really kind of, it resonates with us still. I mean, frankly, you can't look at an underwear model without someone saying he looks like a Greek statue, like that's just in us, and I just, I wanted to get at that as best I could.
So, we won't keep you. I'll just end with one final question for you.
Yeah.
What lessons did you learn about the enduring appeal of Greek mythology and iconography on 300 that helped you with your later work on Man of Steel, Batman versus Superman, and Justice League?
Yeah. Well, I think if you look, first of all, this sort of beautiful composition that I would strive toward is all informed by like the classics, and by what I would say, what those incredible Greek artists, the legacy that they left for us. Also what it means to be a hero, in the face of impossible odds, in the defense of democracy. These are things that, freedom. These are things that any hero could stand for, and family, frankly. That's what, in the end, Leonidas is his legacy, So yeah, a lot of what I have done has been informed by my experience with my brief experience, being a Spartan, and being able to hopefully hold my shield at the right height, so I don't get skewered. But yeah. The saddest thing is I've never been to Sparta. We were going to go last year, and then COVID struck for the anniversary of Thermopylae.
You've been to Greece, though, I take it?
I've been to Greece, yes, but not to Sparta, which I hope to do.
Well, I have to say you made a beautiful film. Obviously, it was visually stunning. In terms of the storytelling, it was just emotional. I watched it recently myself. Hadn't seen it since it came out, I think. I mean, I've watched it more than once, but it's been a while. And, I hate to admit, but it left me in tears at times. It really is an emotional film. And the fact that you made Leonidas' wife more prominent in the film was great, because you really, felt that, right? This queen, my wife, my love. It's just pretty beautiful.
Yeah, you have to have it. Yeah.
I want to thank you, Zack, so much. Congratulations on Justice League, and God bless you and your family.
All right, great. And we'll meet up in maybe in Sparta.
That would be a beautiful thing. Thank you.
Okay, cool.
Thanks again for your time.
Thank you.